Mine's a bit cloudy this morning, so I might mess up some of the names. I had 6 kids last night. Till midnight they were up causing chaos, so forgive me. If you'd like to turn with me to 2 Samuel, you could probably just turn to 9. I'll read verse 4 of chapter 4 quickly before we go to 9. This is the story of David and Mephibosheth. Yeah. So Jonathan, son of Saul, had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and fled, but as she hurried to leave, he fell and became disabled. His name was Mephibosheth. Then going to chapter 9, verse 1. David asked, "Is there anyone still left in the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now there was a servant of Saul's household named Ziba. They summoned him to appear before David, and the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" "At your service," he replied. The king asked, "Is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness?" Ziba answered the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet." "Where is he?" the king asked. Ziba answered, "He is at the house of Micah, son of Amiel, in Lodebar. Lodebar? So King David had him brought from Lodebar, from the house of Micah, son of Amiel. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, "Mephibosheth, at your service," he replied. "Don't be afraid," David said to him, "for I will surely show you the kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all of the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." Mephibosheth bowed down and said, "What is your servant, that you should not notice a dead dog like me?" Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's steward, and said to him, "I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring the crops, so that your master's grandson may be provided for. And Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, "Your servant will do whatever my lord the king commands his servants to do." So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a son named Micah, and all the names of Ziba's household were servants of Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, because he always ate in the king's table, and he was lame in both feet. God bless the reading of his word.
Are we on? Hopefully we're on. Yes, we're on. Excellent. Okay, continuing the One Another series that we're going on. Thank you for the story of Mephibosheth, one of my favourites from the Old Testament. Showing goodness, showing kindness. Continuing on the theme that Andrew gave us last week, we're reading coming from the story of the life of David. And there's just so much richness that can be dwelled, where we can pull from these stories, from the Old Testament scriptures, to remind us about our relationship, about who we are before God, about who God is, and how we should be living our lives in that way. We are continuing on the One Another, and I have circled up in the top corner there, the one that we're looking at today, Seeking Good. Since I found it on there, I'll search through, where is it? There it is. Given the text from 1 Thessalonians. So if you turn your Bible over to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, we'll have a look at the text I was given. 1 Thessalonians 5, 14, 15. We'll read that for you. I urge you, brothers and sisters, warn those who are idle and disruptive, encourage the disheartened, help the weak, be patient with everyone. Make sure that no one pays back wrong for wrong, but always strive to do what is good for each other and everyone else. There's that always strive to do what is good for each other. And that part that comes out, that stuck out at me, you know, we can sit there and we can say, okay, that's cool. One of the people I was reading described this end of Thessalonians as like the shopping list of exhortations that come at the end, just a whole lot of list of everything else like that. But it's more than that. There is a connectivity that comes through with these things. There's a connectivity that comes through with what Paul is trying to convey to the Thessalonians here. It's just not a check-off list of things to do, of things that we should be able to be about. Well, look at this. Starts off with saying always. Always strive to do what is good for each other. Not sometimes, not when the feeling is right, not when the mood strikes you, not when you suddenly remember to, not when it's most convenient. But Paul's reminding us always, this should be part of the characteristic of who we are. It should be part of the natural part of our life, part of so infused within us that it just becomes normal. Always. This is what I do always. This is who I am always. This is what God is calling us to about who we should be. It's not just something we put on. It's just not something that we decide that we think that looks good today. I'll wear that today. This is who we are. Always. Always strive. Okay? And here comes that thing that's going to be in there that recognizes this is not easy. This is not going to be easy. This is not just as simple as it was putting on my jersey this morning and then I forgot that I'm actually wearing it and just carry on wearing it. I have to keep on remembering this is what it is. I need to strive. I need to work for. I need to... The word here, you have some other translations that talk about pursuing. Always pursue what is good. Chase after. Chase after. It's a searching for, it's a looking for, it's a seeking for what is good. It's going to encompass my mind. It's going to encompass me actually thinking about other people. Actually thinking about you. Putting you in my mind. Recognizing that God is calling me to sit there and say, this is who I should be. One another should be on my mind. We should recognize that is the case. As we did this morning, again, Andrew and Colin for that matter, they got up here and there was a recognition as people came in, the people that we haven't seen for a while, visitors that were new and those of us that are still here and we were here every week and everything else, we recognize that we're here and we greet one another and we come in and we acknowledge that we're here and we think about one another. We remember the things that have happened of the weeks in the past, the struggles, the difficulties, the good times, the maybe not so good times, and we come and we connect and we talk with one another about those things. We acknowledge the fact that we're there. There's a striving, there is a pursuing, there is a chasing that we need to remind and we need to put into ourselves and recognize, hey, God is calling me to actually chase after this. To chase after this. And what is it that we're chasing after? We're chasing after doing what is good. An active word, okay, not just considering what is good, not just let me dream about what is good. Actually doing what is good. Actually doing what is good. So what is good? That's got to be sort of like that main question that sort of sticks out in the thing, You sit there and say, okay, it seems fairly simple. Well, what is good? We kind of have a concept of good, kind of think about what is good, but when you actually ask yourself that question, it becomes a little bit more of a deeper question to ask yourself rather than just the surfacey, hey, I had some cake today, that was good. got out of bed this morning. No aches and pains. That was good. Or maybe I had some aches and pains, but still got out of bed. That was good. You know, it's actually something a little bit deeper than that. Good, the word that gets used here, and the equivalent word that gets used in the Old Testament thing, you know, where do we first get, just think about this, throw an answer back at me. Where do we first hear the idea of something being good? Sorry? Okay. Biblically, where do we first hear the idea of the concept of something being good? Creation. Okay, right back in creation. God created light. And God says, good. Separates the waters, the sky from the earth, and it was excellent. He creates the sun, moon, and stars on day 4, and it was birds and fishes? Animals? Good. Excellent. That's what I like to hear. You know, we come along and we make a dishwasher, and it's wonderful, isn't it? Dishwashers are wonderful things. Cars, aren't they amazing? That just absolutely amazing. My mobile phone, incredible. The internet that keeps us connected, life-changingly fantastic. Internet crashes, my mobile, I've had to have several of those in my life. Cars, don't get me started about how much trouble cars are. Dishwasher, just had to replace those originally. But the birds still fly, the trees still grow, the sun, moon, and star comes up in the morning. Good. God doesn't often go for superlatives. There is a quality about what God does and the way that God does things, and says good, and that's enough. We want to sit there and put all sorts of superlatives because we want to make something, build it up and be so much better than what it is, so much better than what we hope it to be, all our hopes and dreams, and give it these fantastic superlatives. But God just needs to one word, and he says, good. How about let's just stick with good. Recognize good. Recognize what that means. This word gets translated a number of different ways in our Bible. Okay, so there's good, there's agreeable, there's pleasant. They're all kind of thing. Beneficial. What is beneficial? What is cheerful? What is favorable? What is pure? What is right? Intelligent. The idea of something is good, it is ripe. I have a good banana, it is ripe, as opposed to one that is spoiled. It's good, it is sound. If it's good, it is worthy. If it is good, generous. Rosie, generous. You talked about that this morning. You know, good can be translated, gets translated in various things as being happy. Fit for purpose. Good, fit for purpose. Good, kind. Just as Mephibosheth, David asked, is there anyone I can show kindness towards? I want to give some good into somebody else's life. Always make this who you are. Pursue good to each other. What is good? That fit for purpose, that generous, that happy, that intelligent, that which is right, that which is favorable, that which is beneficial, that which is positive towards somebody else. Now that's going to be different things for different people. And that's why we have to consider, that's why we have to strive, that's why we have to pursue, because what's good for Suze is not necessarily what's good for Abigail. And what's good for Heather, Joan may need something different. Different things in their life and different positions in different ways, and where we're at in our lives and what's going on. And so the idea of pursuing of what is good is going to mean different things for different people. It's not one size fits all. So what is good? And you can go anywhere and you can do anything, but I figured, hey, I've been given these verses in Thessalonians. Let's see what Paul said to the Thessalonians. Let's just have some examples. Let's flesh this out a little bit with what Paul was talking with the Thessalonians here, and give us some idea about the ideas behind what's good, and then we can take that further beyond that ourselves when we are. And I urge you, brother, okay, here, I strongly urge you, I really want you to exhort you, to encourage you. Again, Andrew, last week, the encouragement, here's Paul saying, I encourage you. This isn't necessarily an easy thing to do, but you might feel a little bit timid about going ahead and doing this, but I'm going to lift you up and say, let's go do this together. I urge you, brothers and sisters, first and foremost, warn those who are idle and disruptive. Okay, well, let's start with an easy one, shall we? Let's start with an easy one, shall we? Warn those who are idle and disruptive. See, Paul actually just previously had talked into Thessalonians. There were people who were bone idle. There were people who just didn't want to do much. Figure, hey, we'll just hang around and wait and see what happens and let God's glory and wonderful things happen. Okay, and the problem is with idleness, and the problem with not doing much is that people become disruptive. People become, my Bible says unruly, okay? They start causing trouble amongst people. The voice gets in the ear and start talking about this and start talking about that, and it becomes a disruptive influence upon all that we are doing and all that we are. You warn people about the dangers of that. Because again, going back to the previous verse, and there were problems that were here. Verse 12, he says, I urge you again, this encouragement to everything, brethren, recognize those who labor amongst you and over you for the Lord and admonish you. Esteem them highly in love for their work's sake. Be at peace amongst yourselves. There's a recognition that there's some people there who just sit there and say, I want to sit back and let everybody else do the work and point the finger at everybody else who's doing things. Those who are out there actually doing the things and actually working around the place and giving their heart and their soul for all that we are coming together. You know, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and throw stones. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and point fingers. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and criticize and say, they're doing it all wrong. They're doing it all wrong. Be careful. It is good to come alongside and to warn people about the dangers of doing that. It is good to come alongside to talk to somebody and put your arm around somebody and say, hey, you recognize what it is that's going on here. You recognize the dangers that we are about the lack of unity. God is calling us to peace, and instead of peace, you are bringing disruption. Instead of peace, you're tearing apart. Instead of peace, you are tearing down. Instead of actually bringing something positive, instead of something that you are bringing something that is sound, that is worthy of bringing something, it's potentially that's something that is actually undermining all that is going on. And I'm not talking about legitimate concerns. I'm just talking about those idle talkers that sit there on the background and just want to bring everything down. It's quite simple actually to tell them apart. You know, you've got all these wonderful ideas. Why don't you come along and help? What are you going to do to make this actually better? What are you actually going to do to be constructive in the situation? And if they don't want to do anything, if they don't want to be involved, if they're not willing to be a part of that, then these are idle and destructive people. We need to warn people against being that way. Paul is saying this is something that is good. This is something that is good. These are people marginalized. And a lot of these people that we're going to talk about now are people that are on the margin, not necessarily the people that are up front in the center doing the hard things. It's those who are struggling around the sides. Urge you, brothers and sisters, encourage the disheartened, encourage the faint-hearted, comfort the faint-hearted. Okay? These are those that are insecure. Encourage those who are insecure. Thessalonians had lots of people who were insecure about their eternal future. In Thessalonian church, what's going to happen when Jesus comes again? What about those who have already died? What about? Encourage those who are faint-hearted, those who are insecure, those who feel inadequate. Do I matter? Am I important? Do I count? Does anybody see me or recognize me as valuable in any way? Seek what is good. Recognize those things and those who are among us that feel those ways. And not everyone's going to feel those ways on all the time or on particular days or whatever, but if we recognize that, there's somebody who needs someone to come and put their arm around them and encourage them. Recognize them as being faint-hearted, disheartened, struggling about their place in the kingdom, about their value to the rest of us. Because some days we can just feel valueless. Paul says, this is a good thing. This is the type of good thing that we're talking about, that we seek out and that we support and that we encourage and that we help with one another. Help the weak. Help the weak. There are those people who genuinely are, they're just not feeling discouraged, they're just not feeling, but they're genuinely, really struggling in their faith. They're really struggling in life. And sometimes it's, there's a bit of a difference between the disheartened and the weak. The disheartened are those who, we get on in life, we get things, but am I really valuable? I need to question my own value, my own part. I know I'm a part of this and everything. The weak are even questioning whether they're a part of this or not. They don't even know if they're actually connected. Help them. Hang on to them. Don't let them go. And be careful about how we hang on to things. There's difference in ways in which we would hang on to your prized china and you would hang on to a sledgehammer. Okay, then? We hang on to different things in different ways. Recognize who it is. Again, this pursuing, this urging, this striving about the differences in who we are and good. What is good for this person? If this person is weak, how do I hold on to this person? Because holding on to this person is different to holding on to that person. What does that mean? And all of a sudden you get to recognize the idea that this striving is actually quite a difficult thing. And is going to require practice, and is going to require something a little bit more of myself than just simply putting on this jumper like I did this morning. It's going to take a lot more thought. It's going to take a lot more practice. It's going to take a lot more effort. It's going to take a lot more of me, putting myself into you. Because we're called to be here for one another. We're called to be here for one another. Don't let go of the weak. Be patient with everyone. Michael, did you ever get that $100? You didn't? Thought you were going to get it overnight, didn't you? And that's how it is with everybody else as well. We sit there and say, this is a disheartened person. Just come and tell them once. They'll be fine for the rest of their life. The weak, got hold of them, pulled them back up, sweet as. The disruptive and the idle, those who are undermining, Just have to tell them once, don't we? And then they sort their lives out and everything's sweet from then on. No. Life does not change, and we do not change, and I don't change just like that. And I can't expect you to change just like that either, and therefore the patience with one another is a good thing. This is a good thing to be about. God calls us to strive for what is good for each other, patience. As each one of us grows, as each one of us learns, as each one of us figures out how do we connect with one another, how do we do family together, how do we worship God together, how do we live in this harmonious group together, how do we live at peace with one another. We have patience with one another. It's that grace that greases the joints, the things that grate, the things that grind, the things that we have trouble with, the things that we stress over, the things that just don't quite fit, helps make us fit. They help make us fit. There's a recognition. Jesus, rich young ruler comes to Jesus and says, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus makes the response and says, again, here's this idea of good. No one is good except God alone. No one is good except God alone. We need to learn good from our good God. Okay, you don't need David Steele good. You need Jesus Christ good. And I need Jesus Christ good. And it's about connecting with Him in my life. That's where I'm going to get the strength. That's where I'm going to get any of the energy. That's where I'm going to get any of the wisdom. That's where I'm going to get any of the insight. That's where I'm going to get any of the goodness that I can pass on to you. And that's where you're going to get it if you want to pass it on to me. Let's go back to, where are we? 1 Samuel. Back to Old Testament again. 1 Samuel, where am I? 12. So Saul is king. Samuel is there. Samuel has said basically, you've ignored God. God wanted to be your king. You said, no, we don't want God. We want another king. And so basically he describes it as being a wicked thing that they have done. In verse 19 of Samuel 12, and all the people said to Samuel, "Please pray for your servants, the Lord your God, that we may not die, for we have added to all of our sins and evil by asking for a king for ourselves." Then Samuel said to the people, "Do not fear, for you have done this wickedness, yet do not turn aside from following the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart." Here's grace in action already. Yeah, you turned against God, but it doesn't have to stay that way. It's not an uncorrectable. It's not a U-turn that you've made in the road that you cannot turn back from. You can turn back. You can change this. I know things went on a wrong play, or you made some wrong choices, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Turn aside from following the Lord and serve the Lord with all of your heart. Verse 21, "And do not turn aside, for then you would go after empty things, which cannot profit or deliver. They are nothing." Okay, paraphrase, not good. "For the Lord will not forsake His people, and His great name for His great name's sake, because He is pleased the Lord to make you His people. Moreover, as for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord, by ceasing to pray for you. But I will teach you the good and the right way." Only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart, for consider what great things he has done for you. But if you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, both you and your king. Samuel recognizes that there's a change and there's a patience that's going to be involved in this. And he says, in his words, I would be sinning against God if I didn't pray for you in your change. I'd be sinning against God if I didn't sit there and put the ones who needed this goodness, ones who needed this change, ones who needed the help in life, if I didn't put them before the throne of the Father. But it's not only just about prayer. And we come down and we say, hey, I'll pray for you. Great, that's fantastic. He carries on by saying, and I will continue to teach you what is good and what is right. Listen to what is good and what is right. You want to recognize, and people recognize, say, hey, I'm on the wrong path, I'm going the wrong way. Someone will say, hey, I'm coming alongside you, I'm here for you, I'm holding on to you, I've got my arm around you, I'm going to pray for you. Will you take instruction about what's good and what's right? And if they want that, if they're open to that, if they care about that and everything, and they want to grow, and then we've got an opportunity, there's peace. You want what's good, that's good. So it comes along, and two-sided thing about each other is recognizing not only am I there to be able to do that for others, but someone may come and say that to me. Am I open to somebody else being good to me? Maybe I'm disruptive. Maybe I'm faint-hearted. Maybe I'm feeling weak. Maybe I'm in need of just someone being patient with me. Am I open to be hearing that? Am I open to somebody else pouring God's goodness into my life for me to accept that, to say, hey, I may need to turn my life around? Because that's where we need to be for one another. That's where we need to be for one another. We might say, hey, this is actually, kind of one of those, be good. That's kind of like a really sort of basic, simple thing. Paul's actually already done this once before in Thessalonians. In Thessalonians 4, verse 9, he says, hey, concerning brotherly love, same group of people, same letter, I have no need to write to you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love one another, and indeed you do towards all the brethren who are in Macedonia. Well, if these people already love one another, if these people already not only love one another in the church where they are, but in the whole region of where they are, and Paul recognizes that, and now he's trying to tell them to be good. Well, Paul carries on when he tells them about their love that they have for one another. He says, but I urge you, brethren, here's that urge, that encourage you, that, I want to push you just a little bit more, that you do so more and more. Let's just not be satisfied with where we're at. Let's just not be satisfied with the level of where we're at and say, you know what, I made it. I'm a good person and I enjoy being good to other people. I'm a loving person and I enjoy being loving to other people. How do I show love? How do I show goodness in a wider context? How do I show that into an even greater extent? How do I grow in that? And from just looking around the room, I think there's plenty that I can grow in doing that, because there's plenty of different people here that have different circumstances and I need to approach in different ways, and there's lots of ways of doing that. But you know what? Paul wants to take it just that step further for us. God wants us to take that step further, because he says not only for one another, but for everyone. Everyone. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter whether they're a Christian or not. Clothe yourself with the very natural ability that you say, I want to be a blessing in that person's life. I want to be a blessing in somebody else's life. Each person that I encounter on the road today, everywhere that I am, the people, Lord, let me be a blessing to that person. I don't know their background, but Lord, you do. I don't necessarily know what it is that they need, but Lord, you do. I want to be a blessing. I want to be a blessing. That's the challenge for us today. It's about our lives, about being a blessing to each other and to everyone else that we meet along the way. You have heard it said, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything. But I tell you, if you haven't got anything nice to say, think of something. Just don't leave it. Just don't do nothing. Just don't walk away. I haven't got anything nice to say, won't say anything at all, walk away. No, think of something. Strive for something. Strive to think of something nice, something good to say to that person in that situation. And God will bless you, will bless the person that you are communicating with, that you were talking with. God will bless his people, and God's name will be glorified. Thank you.